Hello, and welcome to Vision Denial and World Watch 2022. My name is Sam, and if those of you who are new here, I have watched every single playoff of 2022. Yes, every single one of them, even that one. Notably, this particular series we were covering the summer of 2022 on our anticipation and preparation for Worlds. And this you have stumbled upon, or you are a regular subscriber and watcher, to the Meet the Teams portion, where I will take a look at every 24 team, their strengths, weaknesses, playstyles, notable quirks, interesting things to look ahead, all in the attempts to at least teach some people who don't watch certain regions what to expect from their teams, or from the teams that are going. That said, there are two caveats to really put forward. First caveat: a lot of the things that I'm going to be talking about are data-driven. I will put a link down below to the Google Docs of all of the data I have aggregated all in one nice spot. All of the data comes from the LoL fandom, Wikipedia, and from the goal.gg website, both of which have very different focuses to their data points, and both are necessary for these kinds of videos to work. That said, there's a limitation to some of this data because the LPL doesn't send the data as consistently as the other regions, and this is something you'll find with any particular data point for LoL esports globally. The LPL will still be missing some things regarding plates, drakes at 15 minutes, and heralds. A lot of their early game is not there. That and everything relating to vision. Second thing that I have to point out, a lot of the emerging regions, specifically Oceania, Turkey, Brazil, Latin America, and Japan, their teams will have some inflated stats in their favor. That being in mind, when we're looking at their stats, a lot of them will look good, notably the Chiefs and Detonation Focus Me. So some of the stats for every team has to be taken with a grain of salt of either being maybe stronger than expected or weaker than expected by quite a bit, notably because of this kind of inflation of statistics. When you're studying data, this is the kind of adjustments you need to do. That said, team-based data will look skewed. Individual data for each player's less so, because of the kinds of data points that they keep track of. All of that to say is that a lot of the notes that I've taken are using data points that have been collected that you can all enjoy for free down below, or in the various websites that I mentioned, but taking into account a lot of the personal notes that I use in conjunction with this data to show you what to expect with these teams. Without further ado, let's take a look at this video's team. I don't know. This is a pre-recorded message. Let's take a look. Let's meet Fnatic. Fnatic is the 16th team to qualify for Worlds after defeating Misfits, rest in peace, in a fairly decisive fashion in the second round of the European LEC playoffs. Let's meet their coaches. Shaves has been part of the coaching staff since 2020, moving up to the head staff itself in 2021 for the summer part of that, and hasn't looked back since. Yamato, however, has had a long-standing career as a top laner amongst a variety of different European teams, including H2K Gaming and Lemon Dogs as a substitute, as well as Against All Authority, eventually becoming a coach for teams like Major Maker, Glacial Phoenix, Roccat, Splice, Vitality, briefly in Korea with Sandbox Gaming, and then at the 2021 season joining Fnatic as the head coach. And honestly, Fnatic is a playoff team first and foremost. Looking at many of their stats, you would think, well, this is fairly average to below average on a lot of these cases. How did they do so well to get here as the third seed? And honestly, it's a surprise to many. But Fnatic, like Worlds, is inevitable and know each other very well. And the one thing that's been consistent, regardless of playoff or regular season for Fnatic, is their ability to play around vision. They have very excellent vision score per minute, wards per minute, wards cleared per minute, so on and so forth. And they do so around neutral objectives. They've got a very solid sense of how to approach that. But again, inconsistent across the board. They are a very early game centered team, but their early game pressure falters mid to late game, and we end up with a team that cannot follow through with their success from that stage of the game, making them one of the slowest teams still here. They have very high highs in terms of like a game that was 19 minutes and 32 seconds, but on average, their games are still fairly slow because of their inconsistent approach to using their early game to close out games quickly and decisively. Meet the top laner of Fnatic. Those who are international fans may be wondering why Wunder is part of this team and not G2. Well, having left G2 to join Fnatic in the 2022 season, he has had mixed success. Wunder amongst his peers falls below average, and I mean far below average on so many things. His KDA, CS per minute, gold per minute doesn't match up with how others go, nor does his kill participation or kill share to make up for it in any way, shape, or form. And many people would think, wow, is Wunder just much worse than everybody else? In some respects, yes. In some respects, no. Wunder is a weak side player, and consistently so. They give him the ability to play Gwen quite a few times, but much more often he will also be playing teamfight-oriented champions or things that are scaling in some way, shape, or form. I think the issue, however, comes to the fact that they don't give him the gold, they don't give him the time, and they really make him play the weak side fairly frequently. The also other thing to note is that his kill participation is low because he plays a lot of side lane champions, really focusing on separating his opponents from the rest of his team, as they usually focus on neutral objectives and vision control fairly early in, or at least early skirmishes, so that separation may look like Wunder is far below the cut, but in fact he's just mostly average, but primarily on a focus to side lane objectives. Meet the jungler of Fnatic, Razork. Razork had his main stage debut with Misfits Gaming in the 2020 season for the LEC, having left that roster to join Fnatic in the 2022 season. Razork, during the playoffs, showed a number of impressive feats in terms of pushing his advantages, but looking at his overall stats during the entirety of summer, we are left with some confusion. He falls below average, far below average, all of his contemporaries and peers regarding kill shares, kill participations, gold per minute, KDA, and honestly, part of that has to do with his nature to play make in the early game. He's frequently trying to skill check his opposing jungler on a number of things, and you can tell that from the fact that he plays mostly Trundle and Poppy. Picks that honestly usually are meant to intend to either gank frequently or to contest jungle camps frequently. And given the playstyle that Fnatic has during the late game where he slows down a lot of gold collection, his gold per minute will reflect that, as well as his gold share, as most of the time we're going to be seeing the rest of his teammates really benefit from a lot of his work. Razork may look unimpressive from some of the stats, and even if some of them are accounted for in terms of the difference between his playoff run and his regular season run, Razork still shows a lot of impressive work in terms of his ability to really push the junglers that he faces to their limits every single time. Meet the mid laner of Fnatic, Humanoid. Many of you may recognize him as part of the world's theme in the animation itself. Humanoid has had a very long history as playing as a mid laner in the European circuit and the LEC proper, with a brief time playing in the 2018 summer season for Dark Passage in Turkey. Previously also known as playing on Mad Lions, getting the 2 titles in the LEC for the 2021 season. He joins Fnatic in the 2022 season, and again with some moderate success. And we take a look at his stats, and just like his other teammates, he seems fairly underwhelming. And that's fairly understandable given the role. Humanoid on his own has a fairly solid repertoire in terms of his KDA, his CS per minute, his gold per minute, weirdly low kill participation, and fairly solid kill gold share. In fact, gold share he has fairly high compared to a lot of his contemporaries where he's above average in. Humanoid himself is probably a subject of the method in which Fnatic approach the game. They go very quickly in any small skirmishes possible, leading to some much lower KDAs, much lower gold per minute overall, as a lot of the time is sent on pressure and pressure alone. Humanoid will have quite a bit of competition at stake, but I don't think it'll be too much given the caliber that most of the mid laners have at this tournament. He may not be the guy to beat, but he is a solid foundation for the team. Let's meet the bot laner of Fnatic, Upset. Upset has been part of the scene since 2016, having been known as part of Schalke, Origen, and Astralis. He joined Fnatic in the 2021 season and has been a fairly large success factor for Fnatic. Hosting some of the more impressive stats here, his CS per minute is third, his kill participation is second amongst his peer. He tends to be the more proactive amongst his counterparts in this role. And then you fall under some of the bizarre situations. While his kill share is high, his kill participation is very low, especially for somebody who gains so many kills from there. That may say a lot regarding the number of kills that Fnatic really goes for, but he's very much an early game lane and early game team fighting centered player who likes to navigate fairly often around some of the limits he can pull off. Now, eyes should be on him. He is the carry factor for Fnatic, and it wouldn't surprise me if, just like how much gold they spend towards him, if he would be the clutch factor in many games to come. Let's meet the support player of Fnatic, Hylissang. Hilly. Oh boy, what to say about him? Well, he's greatly known for being part of the Unicorns of Love for nearly 4 years, and now part of Fnatic for 5 years. He's been a mainstay support in the LEC for so long, people just know him. If you're an international fan and have been following Fnatic or even Unicorns of Love for some time, he'll be recognizable. But he does not have the same commanding presence that he used to have. His kill participation is high, but is so far lower than many of his counterparts. Same with his KDA being the second lowest. His gold per minute and CS per minute means that he's really involved in the application of his team succeeding, as he plays a lot more enchanters, which has a lower gold count than many of the high engaged melee supports. The number of champs he plays is nothing in particular compared to other supports who are rocking 14, 15, even 20 different kinds of champions. And Hylissang overall just seems very unimpressive. And given his style of play, seems to find him being caught out so frequently with awkward pathing. It just comes to show that mostly his application of the team is enabling them to fight in the ways that seem comfortable and establishing vision where necessary. Fnatic are very good ahead, but Hylissang seems to be only a minor factor in terms of setting up his team and making sure that his team stays alive with zoning and healing and disengage. But the fact that he gets caught out so frequently means that his team has to pull a lot of weight for him. All in all, Fnatic was a very exciting team going up into the playoffs with a very surprising run to get the 3rd seed, and even though we should be expecting them to make it out of play-ins, guaranteed first to go straight into the group stage is not where I would necessarily focus on. I would be surprised if they fell third into the play-in within their own group, especially compared to some of their contemporaries that they have to face and how well they've been playing from the early game and being proactive. But that's their playoff form. Their playoff form for many teams doesn't always follow through, and looking at a holistic sense of their entire split, the summer split, gives a sense that they are not as consistent, especially when it comes to the late game approach. Many of the players get caught out. Fights and skirmishes happen all over the place, and so they're not always together. And when they're together, they sometimes agree and opt into fights that are not of their liking. But when they do show that cohesion and are ahead, especially if they enable upset in a way that is out of this world, and Humanoid is able to zone, and Razork is able to really push down, there's so many factors that have to go right that it was just a surprise to see them go up the ladder in the playoffs. And going into Worlds, it'll be a question of whether or not they can actually keep that up against some of the emerging region teams and even against their counterparts in the legacy regions, right? Or even up against Saigon Buffaloes. It'll be just a matter of watching to see if their playoff form continues suit and they're able to keep up the momentum, or if we're going to see a much more familiar Fnatic with a rougher start to the year, or at least a rougher start to the Worlds. But those are my thoughts and from my observation of watching the playoffs and the stats themselves. I want to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. If you want to see how they made it to Worlds, I'll have one of the playlists on screen. We'll show all of the LEC playoffs, and as well as any other playoffs from one of the different playlists. And if you want to meet any of the other teams, or even see my thoughts across a couple of weeks before we made it, before Worlds themselves across all of the different playoffs, I'll have the playlists up on the screen. Editing me will have a nightmare of a time. With that, if you like this kind of content, leave a like and subscribe. Thank you again for watching. I really appreciate it. And with that, I'll see you next time. Have a good one.